got a haircut. Okay, so if you're a relative of mine that I haven't talked to in a while, or an old high school friend who I've lost touch with over the years, the title of this video may come as a surprise to you. Or if you follow me on Twitter, go follow me. You're probably like, yeah, we know. But all I ask is you just hear me out for a second. I'm not here to dunk on any conservatives. I'm not here to tell you to become a communist or something like that. I'm just a guy who wants to talk about my experiences in life and how they led me to my belief system. If you're one of those people who is like, oh, why can't both sides just talk anymore? Now is your chance. Before I jump into it, I first want to discuss how I got here. I definitely did not start out as a staunch anti-capitalist. I've only really started caring about politics within the last 7 or 8 years, but I remember having very political opinions from a young age. I have fond memories of sitting on the couch with my dad in the autumn of 2004 and celebrating the decisive victory of George W. Bush. Wait. What? Okay. I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. In my defense, I was 10. My dad said taxes were bad because they took money from people, and I was like, good enough for me. Because, I was 10. If it's not immediately obvious, I've gone through quite the political evolution in my lifetime, and this is really the first time I'm going to talk about it. I haven't ever formally sat down and articulated my belief system before, so this video is just as much for me as it is for you watching. See, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, one of the bluest areas in the whole country. But what a lot of people don't realize about Illinois is that it's just as red as pretty much any other Midwestern state. We just happen to have the third largest city in the country hanging out up north. I mean, hell, Mike Pence is from Indiana, and that's right next door. My dad was a tradesman who caught the Fox News bug, and like any other obedient child, I just assumed whatever my parents told me about the world was correct and everything else was wrong. I grew up with Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity on the TV pretty much 24/7. I got Rush Limbaugh on the way to school most days. Looking back, it honestly makes me kind of sick how much propaganda my dad ate right up and then in turn fed to me. But I want to make a very important distinction that I don't necessarily blame my father for the views that he has. He was a tile installer living paycheck to paycheck in the 80s and 90s. He was a white guy, so it's not like he ever had to critically think about these big social issues. Look, I'm not trying to make excuses at all. I'm just saying that I understand how he arrived where he did. And that's something I think the left as a whole needs to do a better job of, is understanding the context of how people's opinions are formed. It's tough for one guy to battle a multi-billion-dollar propaganda machine that is literally designed to indoctrinate him. I, in no uncertain terms, do not support these views at all. But like, pretty much half the country doesn't even vote for president every 4 years. So I'm not going to fault these people for not forming these nuanced progressive opinions on things when they're just trying to scrape by and feed their children. But I digress. So what does that have to do with me? Well, as I mentioned, I wasn't super political as a kid. I mean, I called myself conservative, but I had no fucking clue what that meant. I was a JROTC kid.
4 years, JROTC. Okay, never once was I thanked.
Who was super gung-ho about going off to the army. I didn't even consider college. And now I have not just 1, but 2 degrees. So what happened? Well, to tell you the truth, I really don't know. As I said before, I did call myself a conservative, but I was more of the fiscally conservative, socially liberal types. Like, I fully supported gay marriage, legalization of weed, stuff like that. And I know none of that is like a crazy radical stance, but for a pro-gun, pro-military high school conservative, it was uncommon for 2009. I started to feel the label conservative didn't really articulate my beliefs correctly. Spoiler alert, that's a bit of a theme in my life. So I started looking into third parties. They weren't nearly as mainstream as they are now, at least not in my area. And some of you may already know where I'm going with this, but this is at the point I got really into libertarianism. Not the age of consent or the abolish the driver's license.
Should someone have to have a government-issued license to drive a car?
What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster?
You know, I'd like to see some competency exhibited by people before they drive.
I wasn't like a small government chest thumper, and I wasn't someone super deep into it on like Reddit forums or anything like that. I just really resonated with the idea of personal liberty. People should be able to do what they want, whenever they want to do it within reason. Yeah, sign me up. There was a meme that used to float around. It's, I want gay married people to defend their marijuana with their guns. Like, that was the beginning and end of my political ideology from like ages 16 to 19. And in some ways, it still kind of is. So how did I arrive at what I'm going to call leftism, which I'm going to use as a catch-all term for anything further left than Barack Obama? And now please don't attack me in the comments about what is and isn't leftism. God damn it, I don't care, okay? I'm just using it as a blanket umbrella term. Now, as I alluded to before, I don't really try to label my politics, as I feel it's incredibly difficult for me to summarize my beliefs into one single word. I use the Natalie Wynn strategy.
I prefer to just describe my positions and let others decide on the labels.
I don't call myself a communist. Sometimes I'll call myself a socialist, but that's more out of convenience. If anything, I just call myself a leftist or an anti-capitalist. So the thing that started my journey into leftism was a conversation I had with a friend from high school. He was a couple years older than I was. He was more of a proud libertarian than I was, but we weren't friends because of our politics. We just both happened to have the same views. And to be quite honest, we'd never really even talked politics. But for some reason at this conversation we were, and I forget the actual topic at hand. It was some sort of social program. It might have been healthcare. I don't remember. But he said something to the effect of people should be able to do essentially whatever they want with a small social safety net to keep people from falling too far. And my response was, yes, I absolutely agree. But we quickly realized we had very different definitions of what constituted a small safety net. And this was the thing that forever changed my outlook on the world. What is a small safety net? You know, when I think of safety nets, they're big, they're meant to catch anything that may potentially fall down, like a trapeze artist or something like that. So when it comes to social programs, how do you know where to draw the line? You can ask 100 people and probably get 100 different answers, but my answer, the only thing I've ever really cared about is personal liberty, people being able to do whatever they want within reason. So let's start there. Merriam-Webster defines personal liberty as the freedom of the individual to do as he pleases, limited only by the authority of politically organized society to regulate his action to secure public health, safety, or morals or other recognized social interests. And I think regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, this probably sounds pretty good to you. I can do as I please as long as it doesn't affect public health or safety or other things that we as a society deem important. That's freedom, right? Now, for the record, I didn't know this dictionary definition before I started making this video, so I don't want you guys to think this is where my political ideological journey began, but I think it gives me sort of a nice jumping off point, and the thing that I want to hone in on is the words limited only. Limited only by the authority of politically organized society. So the only constraint one should have is politically organized society and its authority to ensure public health, safety, etc. So if I want to have a gay marriage, I should be able to have a gay marriage. If I want to smoke some dank-ass kush,
I got some good bomb-ass dank-ass from up north.
I should be able to do that too. But what if I want to go to college? What if I want to live to be as healthy as I can be? What if I want to live in a world where the oceans aren't boiling and the planet isn't on fire? If I want to get an education, but I can't afford it, that doesn't sound like it's an issue of public health, safety, or morality that needs to be prevented. If I want access to medical care without going into astronomical debt, not only would I say that's not an issue of safety or morality, but it is an issue of public health. Politically organized society has the authority to ensure public health. That is liberty. Being able to live your life freely without having any sort of constraints on you, within reason, of course. That is what, in my opinion, liberty is, not living in a world without a DMV or whatever. Now, if you say this to libertarians, you'll most likely get something about small government and there's no free lunch and stuff like that. And those are valid criticisms to an extent, but they're not relevant to what I'm talking about right now. They do not answer my question. What if I wanted to go to college but can't afford it? I personally think that having a well-educated society is in our collective social interest. I think having a healthy society that's able to access all the healthcare it needs is in the interest of public health. I think reducing the number of violent deaths by police is in the interest of public safety. Hopefully you can see where I'm going with this. This is where I started to become disillusioned with libertarianism. It has a general small government, no regulation mindset. And if anything, it was my belief that if you believed in personal liberty, then you should be advocating for more government to ensure our needs are being met, not less. I didn't know it at the time, but this is when I first started going down the leftist breadtube YouTube rabbit hole. Now, you might be asking yourself, Gilbert, wait, what about being a Democrat? What about your liberal phase? Weren't you 18 in 2012? Didn't you vote for Obama? And to that I say, fuck no! Oh my god, are you kidding me? Absolutely not. Fuck. I could do a whole other video on why I hate neoliberalism, and if you want me to talk about why I hate and continue to hate the Democratic Party, drop a comment. I'll be happy to make a video about that too. But in short, no. I never became a liberal at any point. I've never voted for Obama, whatever. I voted for Hillary in 2016 because I didn't want fucking Trump to win, but that's the extent of my involvement with the Democratic Party. So I jumped straight from being a libertarian to somewhere on the leftist spectrum, simply for the fact that I had lived through the Obama era, and I saw Democrats as ineffective as conservative, which unfortunately is truer now more than ever before. It's kind of funny, I went from hating Democrats from the right to hating Democrats from the left. So anyways, I continue to ask myself these questions about what do people deserve in this social safety net that I'm conceptualizing. I think people deserve the right to pursue education and to be healthy and all that. And then the more I thought about it, why do people have to deserve anything? Especially when it comes to basic needs like education and health. Not to be cliche, but that is the American dream, right? Anyone in this country can do anything with enough hard work. All men are created equal with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it wasn't long before I realized that all men are most certainly not created equal. And besides the obvious racial component, or LGBTQ identity, or gender, there's a bunch of other things too, like people being born with chronic illness, people being born into poverty, becoming orphaned, becoming disabled. The list goes on. I was taught to believe that anyone, even people born into absolute misery, can achieve prosperity and success in this country. But I looked around and there was nothing, and I mean nothing in place for that to happen for anyone. Most certainly not me. See, I was born into a pretty poor family. We lived paycheck to paycheck pretty much my entire life. I was an accident baby between two people who barely knew each other and had no business raising a child and certainly couldn't afford it. That is not a slight against my parents. I love them, but I'm positive they would agree with me. They used to dig through the couch cushions to try to find spare change so they could buy a box of Kraft mac and cheese so I, their child, could have a meal that night. And yet somehow I was supposed to believe that I could be an astronaut or pro athlete or the president. I mean, I did believe it, but I was a kid. Of course I believed it. But at this point, I am 21 or 22. I'm working some bullshit job in Orlando, Florida, where I'm barely scraping by. I have health insurance, but the deductible is so goddamn high that it might as well be nothing. How the fuck am I supposed to believe that I can achieve prosperity and success? How can anyone look at the state of our country and believe it? Now, I wouldn't call myself a leftist at this point. Quite frankly, I didn't have any time to think about politics because I was too busy worrying about how I was going to feed myself on $11 an hour. But luckily, I was able to find some slightly better paying work. And after a couple years, things began to mellow out. Still definitely not anything I would call prosperity, but I wasn't worrying about money as much. And so this is the point where I really started to become quote-unquote radicalized. It was sometime in 2018 and I found ContraPoints. The first one I saw was Decrypting the Alt-Right. It really helped me put into words a lot of what I was feeling about the growing conservative movement at the time. Her videos on what's wrong with capitalism really pulled back the curtain for me. It put into words what I had been feeling in my gut for quite some time. It's like I always knew there was something going on, but I didn't know how to articulate that. And she gave me the language and the tools that I needed to understand what I was feeling. I encourage almost anyone to watch at least those 3 videos, especially if you're someone who is trying to rectify being critical of capitalism while also enjoying nice things. And it's around this time that I really became a quote-unquote anti-capitalist. I don't remember if I started using that term specifically to refer to my beliefs, but I definitely agreed with all the same sentiments. Okay, I know that was a lot, but I wanted to give some context as to how I personally got to where I am right now. And so before I get into what specifically makes me an anti-capitalist, first we should establish what I mean when I say capitalism. Because I know there's going to be someone in the comments that's going to be like, oh, you hate capitalism, but you have an iPhone? And I don't want to deal with that. So when I say capitalism, what I don't mean is market economies. When I say capitalism, what I don't mean is commerce and trade. When I say capitalism, I don't mean American society. When I say capitalism, I am specifically talking about the economic and social system that's based off profit via private ownership of the means of production. And if you are uninitiated, the means of production are just the things you use to produce the goods that you sell. So a factory or a machine that produces cell phones, farm machines to harvest crops, computers to develop software, etc. So in a capitalist society, someone privately owns these means of production, and they profit off all the goods that are sold produced from these machines, meaning all the cell phone that's made, whatever price the owner sells it for, he gets to keep all that profit. Now, generally speaking, whoever owns these means of production will hire employees to operate them and pay them some sort of hourly wage. And you're like, Gilbert, yeah, I know how jobs work. Why are you explaining this? My point is that if you think about it for more than a few seconds, it's kind of fucked up. So imagine I buy some yarn and knitting needles for $5, and then I pay you $5 to knit me a sweater. And then I take that sweater you knit me and I sell it for $30. Because I own the means of production, I get that $30. And after we account for the $10 in costs, the $5 for the supplies, and the $5 for the employee I hired, I'm left with $20 profit. But why? I didn't do anything. I just had a little money to buy these supplies. Someone else did all the work, but suddenly I've doubled my investment. Is it fair of me to take all 20 of those dollars for myself just because I happen to have $10 to spare to buy supplies in the first place? Both of us were equally important to this operation. I supplied the materials, you supplied the skill, and we made something and we sold it. I'm willing to bet that if you had some money, you'd probably want to buy some knitting supplies so you could just make the sweaters yourself. But you can't because you don't have any money to buy the supplies. And so this money or supplies is what we call capital. That's the capital part in capitalism. Now, obviously, this is just an insanely simple hypothetical, but hopefully you see kind of where it's going. I used to be a manager at a mouse-themed amusement park in Orlando, Florida. You could probably guess which. And I managed a number of restaurants while I was down there. I made a decent salary, but it paled in comparison to the money we brought in. We would regularly pull in $70K a shift. Six figures were a very regular occurrence. And that's just the location that I specifically managed. And the thing that really got me is all of that revenue is thanks to the workers. The cook who made the burger, the employee who served it, the cashier who rang up the transaction. None of that revenue would have come in without those three people. These are all equally important jobs in generating money for the company, as equally important as the ground beef and the walk-in cooler and the grill. And now I was making about 1.5 times what my employees were making, and I was still only going to make about $150 for that shift in salary. You don't think my employees who work their asses off day in and day out to serve those guests deserve a larger slice of that $70,000 pie? If you're saying to yourself, no, they don't, then you can click off the video right now. There's nothing for you here. Don't like, don't subscribe. I don't want your engagement. There's no helping you. You cannot teach empathy. And if you genuinely believe that when the restaurant makes 70 grand, an employee only deserves $88 before taxes, then I don't know what to say to you. How can anyone possibly think that capitalism is the most free system when people don't even have the freedom to miss a day at work because they need that extra $88? You don't need a master's in economics to see how inequitable that system is. But luckily, I happen to have one of those. And I have read many an academic paper detailing specifically how this system is unequal and is all kinds of fucked up for all kinds of people. Quite frankly, it makes me sick whenever I think about it. Because as I mentioned, I came from poverty. I was a free lunch kid. I've slept in my car. I know what it's like to feel like things are hopeless. But I got lucky. It was a privilege to not have any medical issues. It was a privilege to find good job opportunities at the right time. It was a privilege to not randomly get hit by a car. I had the privilege to rely solely on my own grit and determination to achieve the level of success that I wanted. But many people were not as blessed as I was. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying I came from a blessed situation, but there's always someone worse off. And you've got it just a little bit easier than they do. I'm not saying that to minimize people's problems, but even when I was at my lowest point, there was someone scratching and clawing and fighting to get to where I was. Every single day, I think about kids who are just like I was, born into a miserable situation that they do not deserve, with everything stacked against them, and they won't be as lucky as I was. Maybe they develop an illness. Maybe they're gay or trans and their family disowns them. Maybe they get hit by a car and can't afford the medical bills. How can you look at them in the face and tell them that they can achieve prosperity and success? So, what's the point? Why did I make this video? Am I supposed to tell you to go take down Bezos' empire now? Am I supposed to tell you to go form a commune? To be quite honest, I don't really know. As I mentioned before, this is as much for me as it is for you. This is the first time I'm really explaining how I see the world. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert. All I'm really asking is if you don't already agree with some concept of anti-capitalism, ask yourself why. If you're someone who prides themselves on helping others and ensuring the world is a better place for everyone in the future, then ask yourself if you truly think that capitalism is working towards those goals. If you say yes, then ask yourself what metric you think the world is becoming better in. And does that metric measure the lives of actual human beings? I'm blessed to be in the position that I'm in, but you shouldn't need to be blessed so you can survive. I've got a good paying job with fantastic benefits, and I still want everyone to have free healthcare. I paid 6 figures for my degrees, and I still want everyone to have a free education. I got mine. I'm all good. But this isn't about me. This is about everyone else. It's about the people who don't get lucky. To paraphrase one of my new favorite creators, the Zatzman, you shouldn't have to earn a living. You're already alive. Why do you have to earn it? Okay, that's all I really have to say about that. I wish I had some bigger, grander conclusion, but I don't. I'm just a guy with an opinion. These are the kind of things that I like to think about and talk about. So if you want to discuss this, or there's other subjects in this realm that you want to talk about or hear me talk about, drop some comments, follow me on Twitter. Let me know. The main goal I had making this channel was simply to find other people who shared the same interests as me. And this is something that I am very interested in. Let me know what you thought of this, please. This was obviously something that I worked really hard on and thought really hard about. So I want to know your thoughts and I want to know your opinions, and I want to create this dialogue. So thank you. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you could. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of my 19 subscribers. I love you all dearly. I would love to kiss you all on the mouth with your consent, of course. And thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.